Beneath the searing desert sun, the worn wheels of a wheelchair rolled steadily over the fractured pavement of a deserted industrial yard. A black former soldier adjusted his sunglasses, his keen gaze locking onto the rusted warehouse ahead. Suddenly, the thunderous roar of motorcycles shattered the silence. 5 bikers, clad in leather and exuding menace, swarmed in like vultures. Their leader sneered as he circled, but the moment the soldier's voice sliced through the tension and the sharp click of his concealed weapon echoed, they realized their grave miscalculation. The midday sun scorched Mesa Luna, casting elongated shadows over the cracked sidewalks and weathered buildings of the forgotten desert town. A faint hum of cicadas filled the parched air as Jamal J. Carter, a black former soldier, maneuvered his wheelchair down the quiet industrial street. His movements were measured, his posture unwavering, as if immune to the oppressive heat. Dressed in a faded flannel shirt and jeans, he blended in like any other local. Yet beneath his composed exterior lay a sharp, combat-trained mind, always vigilant. 3 years had passed since the explosion in Somalia had cost him his legs and ended his military career, but it hadn't broken him. It had only forced him to adapt now. Undercover as a security guard in an abandoned warehouse on Mesa Luna's outskirts, Jay was closing in on one of the Southwest's most ruthless weapon smuggling syndicates, the Scorched Ravens. The warehouse loomed ahead, its corroded exterior merging with the barren landscape. To most, it was just another relic of a forgotten industrial age. But to Jay, it was a hub of criminal operations. His wheelchair halted at the entrance. Adjusting his sunglasses, he cast a glance over his shoulder and tapped his phone. A soft ping confirmed that the GPS tracker he had planted the night before on a Scorched Raven's vehicle was still active. Inside, the gang was in motion. The distant clang of shifting crates and the unmistakable growl of Ezekiel Vulture Greaves' barking orders echoed through the structure. Jay knew better than to charge in. His mission was to observe, gather intelligence, and wait for the perfect moment to strike. Remaining undetected until the FBI task force was ready to strike, Jay maneuvered toward the building's rear, where a narrow access ramp led to a discreet service door. His wheelchair's reinforced frame handled the rugged terrain with ease, and the modified motor allowed near-silent movement. Reaching the entrance, he accessed the hidden camera he had installed a week prior. The live feed revealed gang members unloading crates stamped with military insignias. Jay's jaw clenched if the Scorched Ravens had access to military-grade weapons. They weren't just a regional threat. They were a national crisis. A sudden crunch of boots on gravel jolted him from his focus. Swiftly, he shut off the feed and rolled into the shadows behind a stack of weathered pallets. "You see anyone out here?" a gruff voice asked. "Nah, just sand and silence," another replied. The voices belonged to 2 Scorched Ravens, their leather jackets emblazoned with the gang's fiery insignia. They scanned the area idly, unaware of Jay's hidden presence. Through a narrow gap in the pallets, he observed them, his hand resting lightly on the compact, yet lethal firearm concealed in his chair's armrest. He wasn't looking for a fight. Not yet. If they spotted him, months of undercover work would unravel in seconds. One of the men lit a cigarette, exhaling smoke as he leaned against the pallets, unaware of how close he stood to Jay. "Man, Vulture is slipping," he muttered. "This shipment's too big. If the feds get wind of it." "They won't," the other cut in. "Not unless someone talks, and we both know what happens if someone talks." Jay's lips thinned. That was the intel he needed. He waited motionless until the 2 drifted farther down the lot. Then, slipping from cover, he continued toward the service door. He had barely reached it when the unmistakable growl of motorcycles shattered the silence. 5 more Ravens arrived, their bikes kicking up swirling clouds of dust as they skidded to a stop near the main entrance. Leading them was Marcus Razor Kenny, Ezekiel's ruthless right-hand man. Razor's reputation nearly rivaled Ezekiel's, brutal, merciless, and intolerant of weakness. Jay's heartbeat remained steady as he observed Razor dismount and bark commands at the others. But when Razor's gaze swept the lot and settled near Jay's position, he stiffened. "You!" Razor called out, striding forward. The other Ravens followed, forming a loose semicircle around Jay's chair. Jay didn't flinch. His voice remained calm, controlled. "Something I can help you with." Razor sneered, leaning in until their faces were inches apart. "You asked too many questions for a—" He paused, eyes narrowing. "What exactly are you doing here?" Jay's hands rested on his armrests, fingers grazing the concealed weapon. "Just a security guard doing his job," he replied smoothly. "Didn't realize curiosity was against the law." Razor chuckled, low and menacing. "Security guard, huh? You don't seem like much of a threat." With a smirk, he reached for— Razor gripped the handles of Jay's wheelchair, tilting it just enough to make his point. "Maybe we should make sure you're not sticking your nose where it doesn't belong," he sneered. Laughter rippled through the gang as Jay's chair wobbled dangerously. Every instinct in his body screamed for action, but he remained motionless, playing the role they expected. A powerless man in a chair. Finally, Razor released his grip, shoving the wheelchair back roughly. "Stay out of our way," he warned, stepping back. "Or next time, you won't be rolling out of here." Jay gave him a curt nod, careful not to escalate the situation. As the ravens dispersed, he adjusted his chair and headed for the road, his exterior calm, though inside, a storm raged. They had made one critical error. They had underestimated him, and Jamal Carter had spent a lifetime turning underestimation into his greatest strength. The sun dipped below the horizon, bathing Mesa Luna in deep amber hues as Jay wheeled toward his modest rental on the town's outskirts. His expression never wavered during the encounter. But now, alone in the quiet of his living room, he allowed himself a single measured breath. Powering up his laptop, he accessed the hidden cameras he had planted around the warehouse over the past month. The live feed showed the ravens still hard at work, their activity intensifying under the cover of night. The presence of Razor confirmed what Jay suspected. This wasn't a routine arms deal. It was bigger, riskier, a critical shipment. His encrypted phone buzzed. A message from Special Agent Vanessa Trenton, his FBI contact. "Trenton, we ready to move. Any confirmation on the shipment?" Jay's fingers flew over the keys. "Jay, military-grade weapons confirmed. Large shipment. They're using the old warehouse off Desert Ridge." A pause. Then another message flashed across the screen. "Trenton, understood. We'll mobilize for a raid at 0100. Stay clear." Jay's jaw tightened. Stay clear was an option. If he pulled back now, there was no telling how much contraband the ravens could move before the FBI arrived. He needed to be there, to ensure nothing slipped past, and to wipe any trace of his surveillance before it was discovered. Months of covert work depended on it. Reaching for his backpack, he ran through his gear. A compact tactical drone, a high-resolution camera for close-range footage, and a custom-modified sidearm. His wheelchair, outwardly unremarkable, was reinforced and equipped with discreet compartments housing everything necessary for the mission. By the time he returned to the warehouse, night had fully settled. The desert was unnervingly still, the only sound a faint whisper of wind rustling through the sagebrush. Jay had parked his vehicle a quarter-mile away, opting to approach in his wheelchair to avoid unwanted attention. The familiar hum of its motor was nearly imperceptible, a stealth enhancement he had installed early in his undercover work. Reaching the warehouse's perimeter, he slipped into the shadows near a side entrance. His hidden cameras revealed a shift in activity inside. Razor and Ezekiel Vulture, Greaves, now stood at the center of the main floor, scrutinizing the contents of an open crate. Through his earpiece, Jay tapped into their conversation. "Straight to the depot," Razor was saying. "This shipment is going to put us on the map." Vulture grunted, the harsh glow of a work lamp casting sharp lines across his weathered face. "Buyers don't want excuses, Razor. If this deal falls apart, it's our heads, especially mine." "It won't. We're locked down tighter than a vault," Razor assured him, confidence dripping from his tone. Jay's lips curved into a slight smirk. Razor's so-called vault was far less secure than he believed. Activating his tactical drone, Jay guided it toward the upper rafters, its camera offering a clear vantage point of the crates below. One, now fully exposed, displayed rows of military-grade rifles packed with meticulous precision. Another, partially unsealed, revealed what looked like rocket launchers. Jay's stomach tightened. The Ravens weren't just smuggling small arms. They were dealing in heavy artillery. This was bigger than Mesa Luna. It posed a national security threat. He zoomed in on a document clipped to the side of a crate, its surface marked with an official government insignia. Exactly what he suspected. These weapons were stolen from a military supply line. Capturing a snapshot through the drone's interface, he forwarded it directly to Trenton. "Jay," Intel confirmed. "Heavy artillery in play. Move up the raid." The reply came almost instantly. "Trenton, we're 40 minutes out. Do not engage." Jay exhaled sharply. He knew better than to argue. But the situation was escalating by the second. On the drone's feed, he spotted Razor signaling a group of Ravens, who immediately began wheeling crates toward the warehouse's rear exit. They were getting ready to move the shipment. "No," Jay muttered under his breath. If the Ravens got those weapons out before the FBI arrived, the entire operation would be for nothing. He had to slow them down. Keeping low, Jay maneuvered along the warehouse's perimeter, sticking to the shadows. He reached a maintenance access panel near the rear loading dock. Pulling a screwdriver from his bag, he pried the panel open, exposing the control system for the overhead bay doors. His fingers moved swiftly, bypassing the security locks and installing a small device. Just as with a single press of his phone, the loading dock doors locked into place, sealing off any potential escape routes. Just as Jay finished, voices carried through the night. He froze. "You hear that?" one of the Ravens muttered. "Probably just the wind." Another dismissed. Jay remained perfectly still, his hand hovering near the concealed compartment in his chair where his sidearm rested. Being discovered now was an option. Footsteps approached, stopping mere feet from his position. "Thought I heard something," the first Raven murmured. Jay's grip tightened on his armrest, every muscle coiled. The men lingered for a tense moment before finally turning back toward the warehouse. He exhaled soundlessly, waiting until their voices faded before activating the lock. A soft beep confirmed the dock was secured. From his concealed vantage point, Jay guided the drone in closer. Razor and Vulture were no longer alone. They stood with a third man, someone Jay didn't recognize. Unlike the gang's usual rough-cut appearance, this newcomer wore a suit, moving with a precision that screamed military training. "Who's the suit?" Jay muttered, zooming the drone's camera in for a clearer look. "Everything is in place," the man said, his tone measured, commanding. "But you're running out of time. The FBI is closer than you think." Jay's breath hitched. Who was this man? And how did he know about the FBI? Before he could process it, Vulture barked an order. "Get everything loaded now. I want this shipment gone in 20 minutes. Jay's pulse quickened. The Ravens were accelerating their timeline. He didn't have 40 minutes. He had 20, if that. As the gang scrambled to move the crates, Jay fired off a final message to Trenton. "Jay, they're moving now. I'm delaying as much as I can, but you need to get here faster." The response came instantly. "Trenton, do not engage. Hold your position. We're almost there." Jay's jaw clenched. He understood their caution. But they weren't here. They couldn't see what he saw. Right now, he wasn't just holding his position. He was the only thing standing between the scorched Ravens and an escape that could compromise everything. Minutes bled away as Razor and Vulture barked orders, their voices ricocheting through the cavernous warehouse. The Ravens moved with renewed urgency, stacking crates onto pickup trucks and vans, each one filled with enough military firepower to ignite chaos far beyond Mesa Luna. Jay's fingers tightened around his chair's controls. He had managed to seal off the rear loading docks, but the gang was resourceful. If they realized the doors were locked, they wouldn't hesitate to use brute force, or worse, the heavy-duty tools he had spotted near the main floor. Every second counted. He guided his drone into a grin. "About damn time," Razor muttered, stepping forward as the convoy of vehicles rolled closer. The approaching headlights cast long shadows across the warehouse, their engines a deep growl against the desert silence. Jay's pulse pounded. This wasn't the FBI. Vulture squinted into the darkness, then nodded. "That's our buyers." Buyers. Jay's stomach tightened. If this was the handoff, the stakes had just skyrocketed. The scorched ravens weren't just transporting weapons. They were selling them. And if the FBI didn't arrive in the next few minutes, these weapons would disappear into the hands of whoever had the cash to pay. He guided his drone higher, angling the camera for a better view. The convoy came to a halt just outside the warehouse perimeter. Several men stepped out, their silhouettes crisp against the headlights. Unlike the ravens, these men carried themselves with discipline, organized, prepared. One of them, a tall figure in a dark coat, scanned the area before speaking. "You're late," the man said, his voice cold and clipped. Razor didn't flinch. "Had a few delays. Nothing we can't handle." Jay's fingers hovered over his phone. He needed to alert Trenton fast. But before he could type out a message, the suited man from earlier stepped forward, addressing the newcomers directly. "Let's cut the chatter," he said. "Show them the merchandise." Jay's blood ran cold. If the deal went through before the FBI arrived, there would be no evidence, just empty crates and a vanishing act. He had minutes, maybe seconds, to stop this, and he was running out of options. Razor's eyes darted toward the ridge, his hand hovering near his holstered pistol. The buyers instinctively shifted, some angling toward cover, their weapons at the ready. Jay held his breath. The illusion of approaching vehicles had worked, but it was a double-edged sword. If the buyers thought they were walking into a setup, this could turn deadly fast. The leader of the buyers raised a hand, signaling his men to hold position. "You expecting company, Razor?" His tone was sharper now, laced with suspicion. Razor scowled, masking his own uncertainty. "No one besides you. Probably just some idiot passing through." He turned to his men. "Check it out now." Two of the ravens peeled away, moving toward the perimeter with rifles raised. Jay knew he had seconds before they found nothing and reported back. He guided his drone higher, searching for his next move. Then he saw it. One of the FBI's unmarked SUVs cresting the ridge in the distance, still far enough to be unnoticed, but closing fast. Relief flooded Jay's chest, but it was short-lived. The buyers weren't waiting around. "Enough games," the leader snapped, turning back to Razor. "Open the damn crate now." Crusher jammed the key into the lock, and with a metallic clank, the container swung open. Jay's drone feed zoomed in, confirming his worst fear. Stacked inside were sleek, black missile launchers, still bearing military inventory codes. This just became a national crisis, and Jay was the only one standing in its way. Pistol hesitated for a split second, his eyes darting between his men and the approaching FBI agents. The reality of defeat was sinking in, but pride and desperation held him in place. His finger twitched on the trigger, but before he could make a decision, Trenton's voice rang out again, cutting through the chaos. "You're outnumbered, Razor. Put the weapon down, and no one else gets hurt." Razor snarled, his grip tightening on his gun, but just as he moved to raise it, a shot rang out from the other side of the compound. The bullet missed by inches, sending Razor stumbling back. Jay's eyes flicked to his drone feed. He hadn't triggered the shot. Someone from the buyers group had taken the first shot. The standoff escalated instantly. Razor roared, "Move out." His men scrambled to retreat, but the buyers weren't ready to back down just yet. It wasn't just a gunfight anymore. It was a full-blown war zone, and Jay could only watch from the shadows. The FBI had the upper hand in numbers and tactics, but the buyers' precision and the ravens' desperation were making this more dangerous than it should have been. Jay's heart raced as his eyes scanned the battlefield through the thermal camera on his drone. Suddenly, a loud crash reverberated through the yard as one of the FBI agents was thrown to the ground by a well-aimed shot. Jay's breath caught in his throat, the reality of the situation hitting him hard. The agents were taking hits now, and it was only a matter of time before someone else got caught in the crossfire. The buyers' SUVs revved their engines, kicking up dust as they maneuvered toward the edge of the compound. The ravens, still firing desperately, weren't about to let them leave without a fight. The tension between the two groups was palpable, and Jay knew that if they didn't surrender soon, the situation would escalate beyond anyone's control. His mind raced, calculating every possible outcome. The FBI was closing in, but the buyers were still trying to break through. Jay glanced at the feed from his drone. his hand shaking as he adjusted the camera. He couldn't afford to hesitate now. It was all falling apart, and his role in stopping it was far from over. For O'Mini, as Jay wheeled himself toward his van, the weight of the night's events finally began to settle in. The adrenaline that had kept him sharp throughout the mission now ebbed away, leaving behind a quiet satisfaction. He had played his part. No, more than that. He had been the linchpin, the one who held the operation together when it seemed like everything could have fallen apart. Trenton's words echoed in his mind. You made a difference. Jay had often wondered if he was truly making an impact, but tonight had answered that question with resounding clarity. The Ravens were dismantled, their leaders and buyers arrested, and their network of destruction dismantled piece by piece. He slid into the van, the door closing with a soft thud behind him. His fingers brushed the controls for his chair, and the hum of the engine started. But it wasn't the rush of victory that filled him as he drove away. It was the calm before the next storm. The war against injustice was never over. It was a fight that never ceased. But for tonight, Jay had earned his peace. He let the world outside the van fade into the rearview mirror, focusing instead on the quiet road ahead. Tomorrow, there would be more battles to fight. But tonight, he could finally breathe, and that was enough. The screen faded to black, and the words appeared. Join the movement for justice, subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and make these stories a part of your daily life. Together, we can create change. The story was finished, but the fight, that was just beginning.